Yes, hello. So today is, I think it's March 12th, 2026, and it is 1:52 p.m. U.S. Central Time. My name is Rinaldo J. Aguilar-Marcano, and this is demo D124. So for this demo, I have a few items, right? So I mean, there's some. I have some important things, right? But I'll start with the smaller items this time because there are just a few, and just to get that out of the way, right? So the first thing is information I got from the Venezuelan informant, and this is interesting. I mean, I'm going to mention a couple of things, right? Because they could be verified by authorities if they ever do something about this, and also because this shows, I think, connection between all these entities that you would think are disconnected, but they're working together, right? So this is what he told me. He told me a few things, right? Number one, he told me that at my home, once the child was taken, a few weeks after or a few days after, I found in Suleima's in one of her what do you call that, like in one of the drawers, right? I was organizing things, like putting the house in order after all that happened, and in one of the drawers there was a phone that was hidden it was placed in a way that was difficult to see, right? And this phone contains a crypto wallet. Now the informant explained to me that this wallet doesn't belong to her. This is actually the crypto wallet of Andres Salvador Mendez. And he told me that they do this like this is a TTP. I mean, it's not a thing that they did, the two of them, right? This is a standardized procedure. The procedure is the crypto wallet of the Venezuelan, or the intelligence agent, the intelligence officer, the foreign intelligence officer, the crypto wallet that for the crypto he got paid for his hard work and relaxing his moral boundaries. The crypto wallet is kept in the house of the target, because I mean the informant told me that the thinking is that the last person that would ever find out is the target, right? Because of how deep the deception goes. So what they do is that they put his money in the target's house. So this, I'm saying this not because of me. I mean, I have the wallet in my possession, right? And I will give that to the authorities. Although here I have to say something, right? I don't know. This might be silly. I don't know, but it's something. It's something that I don't know how to describe it, but it kind of bothers me, right? So I don't know. It's kind of a proposition, right, to authorities. If they ever see this thing, let me propose something to you. I don't know how to express it, but like I feel like that money, right? And by the way, the informant told me that he has over $1 million, right? And from what I can see, because I did some bench testing on this device, right? It is possible that this is true, right? I cannot see the exact amount, but from what I'm seeing, it's possible, right? But according to the informant, this thing has over $1 million, right, in crypto. But anyhow, the thing I want to tell you is that, and this is something that kind of bothers me, right? Like, in a way, like, I mean, having this money in my possession, right? Having this $1 million of Andres Salvador Mendez in my possession bothers me, because, how do I say this? It feels like this money was paid in exchange of my freedom, right? Like, this money is what kept me hostage, right? For this long. So I don't know. I feel like it would be wrong if the authorities seize this money, because it would feel like they're seizing my freedom. Like, I don't know. I know it might sound weird, but like psychologically, this is how it feels. It also feels wrong if I keep the money, because I mean, if the authorities seize the money and give it to me, like this is what your freedom was worth, right? You get the money. It also feels wrong. Because I don't know, it feels weird, right? So I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think that money should go to something good, right? Anyhow, so that's the first thing he told me about the wallet. The second thing he told me was about a new harassment campaign by, Phil Denning and the Lake Point Estates HOA, right? Because now they're in this bind that they can do much with George Telfair, because at this point it's just like committing fraud, right, to the crimes. So the other bullet they have left is that, well, they have two bullets left, right? So they have the citation in the Justice Place 1.1 in Fort Bend County for the traffic lights that according to the police officer that is paid by the Chinese with crypto. According to him, the lights were blue, and I was impersonating a police officer, right? So they have that, which is on the 23rd, I think. And they also have the other bullet is the lawsuit of Lake Point Estates suing my company, but they didn't serve the company. They served me personally, and that makes the whole process invalid. But they still have that, right? I mean, they still can create void orders with that. And that is supposed to take place on the 23rd or 24th. I have to check, right? Of March. So in 2 weeks. So there's a new harassment campaign, and the informant told me, I have to tell you, I haven't checked the systems or the snapshots or anything on those cases, because I'm concentrating in a bigger fish in a way, right? But the informant told me that he told me that yesterday when I was running, and I didn't send any messages to him, but I received something, right? And he told me that there's a new harassment campaign, and also that they are pairing it with some harassment messages, like text messages, right? And I have to tell you, I hadn't received any messages, so I went this morning and checked my Google Voice account, which I rarely check because it's tied to that Google account that they want to hijack, right? So I rarely connect to that account. But anyhow, I go and check the account, the Google Voice, and in fact, I have a bunch of harassing messages, basically threatening me with eviction, right? But it's not coming from the HOA itself, right? So these messages are coming from some company contacting me, telling me that I'm gonna go through a difficult period of time because of the foreclosure in my homes, right? And this is harassment because, well, first of all, my homes do not have any mortgages. The home I own personally doesn't have a mortgage, right? And the other property, which is owned by the corporation, it doesn't have a mortgage. So how can it be foreclosure, right? But this is a technique that they do. Like, they send you these messages that can be explained in some other way. It was a mistake, right? So this company made a mistake and contacted you by mistake. But it's in reality them threatening you with an action, right? Like, for example, 2 years ago, they started sending me mailers for a funeral service and mailers for estate planning, basically telling me that I was going to die, right? And this is not new. Like, there is I don't remember their name, but there is a couple that they were like journalists, or they are journalists or publishers, I can't recall, and they were working on kind of an expose about eBay, right? And eBay started sending them a series of mailers and things to harass them, like the same thing, like funeral mailers, like it's a TTP, like this is a TTP. So they send you something that looks legit, that is coming from a company, but in reality is a veiled threat, right? So the veiled threat is eviction. They're threatening me with eviction. I don't know which one of the two houses they're going to evict me from, but apparently there's going to be an eviction, right? It could be coming from that court, or the in Fort Bend County, right? Because a judge has the power to get me out of a house, right? Or it could be coming from the thing that Larry Ryan does with the water, where he cuts off the water, and then that they could trigger that rule in the Texas. I don't know. There is a rule in Texas that if a house doesn't have water, it could be deemed inhabitable, right? And whoever has the property can be evicted, right? So that's why they are so interested in cutting the water, right? And they, by the way, on the Valley Side property, they already did this with property owned by the company. But recently, they also did the exactly same rules of Larry Ryan, but with the Valley Side property. They transferred the water service to Inframark, which is a company that it's basically owned by the Chinese and Diosdado Cabello. And Actually, I think that the ownership of the company is really Iranian, because the executives are they're more Iranians than Venezuelans in the executive train of Inframark. So I think the controlling people really are the Iranians, but I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Right? I'll have to like dig deeper. But anyhow, they also were going to cut the water of the Valley-side home. Like, so you see, this is a technique. They cut the water and then they evict you, right? And they're sending me this message, but this is important because this was, who warned me about the actions in the court, upcoming actions, right? The further harassment, the water being cut off or potentially being cut off, and I paid it, by the way. If they still cut it off, that's a tremendous, abuse, right? But they can do whatever they want, right? Because there's no authority that takes any action, right? The informant warned me about all these things related to the lawsuits of field ending, the water, and the veiled threats over text messages, right? Which is harassment, right? And I don't know how else to tell them to stop, because they're gonna get in trouble. Like they don't seem to get this. The only thing that I haven't done is to send them smoke messages, right, from the backyard. It's the only thing that I haven't done. But the rest, every possible way that I could think of how to communicate with these criminals, I've tried it, right? But it doesn't work. They don't listen to reason. They only listen to force. So because of that is what I came here to do today at FedEx. That's, I'm trying to get somebody with force to engage with them. I'll tell you more about that in a second, right, after I finish this part. So he told me about the crypto wallet. He told me about the new harassment campaign. There was something else that I might be missing. Let me give you the case number of that harassment campaign with the court. It's 25-DCV 330-324. I will repeat that. It is 25-DCV 330-324. Also, now that I'm talking about judges and all those things, I finally discovered yesterday how is that they encode the crypto payments of the judges, because this was a mystery to me. Like, if you look at Judge Telfair, right, his private practice, he's marking the index. Like, there's no question that he's part of the network. He has a practice that is called Telfair PC or something like that, right? And it's in Bel Air or some. It's a city. It's not for Bend. It's somewhere nearby. But if you look at the scores that are marked in his private practice, the crypto payments are small. Like, I wouldn't think that a judge would kidnap a child, let alone multiple children, for that amount of crypto, right? That was one of the things that I couldn't explain. But I understood yesterday how it works. This is how it works. They create, and this is very telling because this tells you how important the judges, that the judges are the ones running this racket, right? Look at what they did. The Chinese, right? So instead of marking their homes with the crypto payments, as they do with all the other agents, what they do is that they create what they call master plan communities. And this is funny, right? So, for example, there is a master plan community nearby that is called Telfair, right? And that community, I believe, represents the crypto payments or positions of Telfair, right? So his markers are not stored in a house, are stored in a master plan community. And this is, of course, more secure for multiple reasons, right? And if you look at Judge Bell, there's also another master plan community that has his last name nearby, right? And if you look at Walker, there is another master plan community that has the name Walker in the name, right? So all these actors that have this RICO enterprise in the family courts, I'm talking specific about family courts that kidnap children using the courts. There is always a master plan community nearby with the name of the officers or the judiciary officers or the quasi-judiciary officers of that family court nearby, right? And that is what holds the markers, right? But this tells you, the fact that they went, the Chinese, right, that they went in this direction of giving this super rare strategic geographical location for storing their markers to these specific people, tells you two things. One, that the kidnapping of the children is a cornerstone of the RICO enterprise. It's not a racket. It's not simply a racket. It's the masterpiece, right? It's the main operational weapon of these people, right? Kidnapping our children. Because they could have given these markers to other people in this network, to the SEBIN operatives or to the Black Ops guy, right? His markers could be in a master plan community, and they're not, right? So the intelligence apparatus is an appendix of this RICO enterprise. But the real RICO enterprise, the people that are running these are the judges, right? That's why their own houses, their own crypto is not in houses, it's in communities. It's marked in communities. It's measured in communities. And, I've known this for a while. What you have to look is, I'm going to tell this to authorities, right? So you have an idea on how to decode this thing. The key is, the formula is a multiplication of the number of points by features that are fixed in the geographical place. For example, if it's a house, you take the lot size, which is fixed. They can increase the house, reduce the house, but the lot cannot change, right? So that feature is fixed in time for decades, maybe even centuries, right? So you take the number of points stored in the lot and you multiply them by the size of the lot. That gives you the number that correlates directly with the number, the amount of money, right? In the case of the master plan community, is the lot size of the community. That is the feature. And if you look at the master plan community of Judge Telfair, it is something like 2,400 acres, right? It's measured in acres, right? And if you look at the lot size, the terrain size of the master plan community of Judge Bell, it's 3,000 acres, 3,100 acres. And this is very, very interesting, right? So what this tells you is that Judge Bell, in reality, is more powerful and has more money than Judge Telfair, right? Which you would think is counterintuitive, but I've learned through this process that it's actually a TTP. What they do, they put the most powerful person not in the most powerful position, right? Case in example, Terry Adams, right? Terry Adams is just the Chief Justice of a Court of Appeal. Don't get me wrong, it's a powerful position, but, he's not a Supreme Court Justice, right? And he's not in the Supreme Court of the United States. He is in this mid-level, in the biggest scheme of things, he's mid-level, right? But he is really the most powerful individual in the network here locally, right? But is one of the least visible. That's why that is so brilliant, right? So in the case of the judges that kidnap children, you would think that Telfair is higher ranking because he's the one that, signs the orders and all that, right? But in reality, the one that is higher ranking is Bell, right? And that's why I say, I've known this for a while, even before finding the master plan community yesterday. And this is why I save, gathering evidence about his crimes to the last possible moment, right? And it happened to coincide with the trial of Judge K.P. George, right, on March the 10th. But Judge Bell is actually higher ranking than Telfair. And if you think about it, it does make sense. Because, for example, in my case, right, when they targeted me and my child, who was the judge that signed the TRO, right, that kidnapped the child, that really kidnapped the child? The physical act of removing the child from the home, which is the most serious act, right? What happened after could be explained as a series of misunderstandings, right? But kidnapping the child in that way and creating this dual order, one that doing these two versions of the order, one that is not really an order, and then so index number 7, and then the real order, index number 8, and then swapping them as they need, depending on who asked for the document, right? The judge that actually executed that TTP was Bell, right? That's why he gets paid more, because he's taking more risk, right? And that's why he's more prominent, and that's why he is, when this started on 2025, he was portrayed as an associate judge, right? In these court systems, at least in Forben, the associate judge is like a junior judge, right? That's the way it looks. Telfair sits in the higher podium, right? In the higher bench. There's like 3 benches, right? So this desk that they has 3 levels. Heights, 3 different heights. It's like a pharmacy It's like a pharmacy counter. You can think, but the person is elevated above everybody else. Which, by the way, through this process, I think that thing is fundamentally wrong, because these people are putting themselves as if they were above everybody else, right? And they are. That symbolism is reflective of what they're doing, right? They are not above everybody. They're citizens the same as us, and they should be held accountable to the laws the same as everybody else. So that thing of having the judge in a podium, that I think that thing should be evaluated. That would be my contention, because that's, it's a perversion, right? And it's a perversion that they are exploiting. So anyhow, so that's what they did, right? So anyhow, in that podium, Bell sits in a podium of a height that is below Telfair, and that makes you think psychologically that he's lower level, but in reality, he is the chief kidnapper in the court, right? Now, I also have to tell you, Bell is interesting because he comes from Ohio. He went to a school with, and I know this because I got this from data. He go to law school. Imagine this, with, I think was with Casey, with the guy from Akamai, from the chief data officer of Akamai that was covering for the attacks of Liana Technologies in 2023 or 24, right? 23, I think, not early 2024. So he went to a school with the chief privacy officer that was covering the crimes of an enterprise attacking my company 3 years ago, right? Or 2 years ago. And he went to school with him. I mean, what are the chances of that, right? And in contrast, Telfair got elected, quote unquote, because it was an election that was uncontested by the Republicans. And I don't want to mix politics into this, but that's obvious, right? What they do, they want to appoint the judge that is going to cover for the actual kidnapping, the kidnapper, right? The kidnapper judge, Bell, right? So they appoint a second judge, but they don't want, the Republican Party don't like, Abbott doesn't want to appoint him directly, right? So what they do, they create an election, but the Republican Party doesn't participate. And then Telfair, posing as a Democrat, wins the election uncontested, right? So this way, it cannot be tied to the Republican Party in any way, right? But in reality, the important operative judge in this scheme is Bell. He's more important than Telfair. Telfair is just coming at the last minute to help, right? At least that's the way it looks, right? From all this analysis. And from the data, right? That's why the master plan community of Bell is bigger than the master plan community of Telfair. Now, here I have to tell you something. This also explains another thing, another weakness of their system that I've noticed, for a long time ago, is that not all, but like many of these important judiciary officers, and I know this because at this point I've paraded through all these courts, right, trying to get my son back. So the judiciary and the quasi-judiciary officers of this court have names that repeat a lot. Like, you will see a lot of Walkers, you would see a lot of Bells, you will see a lot of, Adams, right? In the case of the Adams, I think they're really family, but for example, the Walker, the Walker that is the Chief Justice of the Court of Appeals of the Fifth Circuit in the federal branch, that lady, that woman of judge, she's a judge, with the last name Walker, is not a family member of Beverly McGrew Walker, obviously, right? Because they're of different ethnicities. Beverly McGrew Walker is African American, and I think Jennifer Walker is her name. She is Caucasian, right? So it's unlikely that they're related. But the reason why they share the same last name is because of this thing with the master plan communities. Is because there are not a lot of master plan communities, right? So they have to split them and share them across multiple actors. And that makes it so that this marker has low cardinality. We call that in data science, meaning there are not a lot of possible combinations. And that makes it detectable, right? So, at this point, it's a slam dunk for the FBI or the OFAC to get these people. All you have to do is step number, I'm gonna give you the algorithm, right? I'm gonna make it super simple. Step 1, go to my website, XisList.org, and click on crypto payments on that tab. Step 2, or actually click on the dashboards and the one that says Earth, and identify the areas in the United States that have big hubs, big concentration of scores and points. Step number 2, locate where are located the family courts in that area. Which are the family courts, okay? And identify the judges. And find judges that have names that match master plan communities in the same state. That's all you have to do, right? After you identify those judges, find the houses in those master plan communities in the GeoIndex in XisList.org. And then you will have and measure the size of the lot of the master plan community, right? Now, there's one thing that I haven't figured out is the following, because they're sharing the master plan community, for example, the Walker, right? So the deputy Walker look at how many Walkers there are. Jennifer Walker, Beverly McGrew Walker, and Deputy Walker. All of them were involved in obstructing justice and kidnapping the child. In terms of Bell, you have Richard Bell and you have Officer Bell, who was the officer that responded. I mean, what are the chances of this? The officer that responded when I called 911 because the child was taken, his name is Bell. And then the judge that signed the TRO, the two versions of the TRO that they're doing this TRO game with, right? They say that judge is also named Bell. I mean, what are the chances of that? Please, they think that the rest of the world is stupid, right? It's overconfidence, really, what they're doing. They're being overconfident on the capabilities of the authorities to understand this. I mean, this is obvious, right? Especially now that the database is public, right? But anyhow, that's basically the algorithm. You have to identify, them, and then find the names that repeat among the clerk, the judges, and law enforcement. Because the other piece of this, as you can see, with Deputy Walker and with Deputy Bell, is law enforcement. Because at the end, they are the ones that are going to either obstruct justice, or take the child, or put the target in prison, right? So they also have to be marked in the same way. But the thing that I haven't figured out, it's a second charting function of this. Why? Well, because obviously what they're doing, if you think about it, right, this is charting of the crypto payments by name. That's what they're doing. And the charting function is basically the name of the master plan community, right? But because they're sharing the master plan community, for example, the Walker's master plan community has to be shared between Deputy Walker and, for example, and Beverly McGrew Walker, right? So there has to be a secondary charting function that tells which houses in that master plan community correspond to the ledger of each one of the officer, quasi-judiciary officer, or law enforcement officer, right? There has to be a charting function. It could be, a secondary charting function to understand, to let the app of the Chinese understand, the banking app, the secret banking app they have, understand which houses sum up to the balance of the clerk, or which houses sum up to the balance of the Deputy Walker, or which balance sums up to the balance of, Jennifer Walker, right? So there is a secondary function there that I haven't been able to derive, but not because I can't. I will do it. It's just that I haven't put time and effort because I've been busy with the patents and the patent application. By the way, I want to give you a disclaimer here. When I say patents, what I really mean is patent applications. The patent have not been granted to me, but I applied, right? So this is interesting. There is a, yes. Okay. I have to tell you something. So that's what I wanted to chat about. But let me talk more about the patent applications. Okay. So on the patent applications, yes. So let me tell you what I've been doing. Right, I've been on a mission to create a fortress of intellectual property. This is related to the technologies I described before, related to the computer vision based network interface. That after I designed that, it led to a series of other inventions that I also applied for patents. Okay, And I've described some of them, but there was another batch that I have not described yet, and I want to do that here because they have huge implications. Okay. I'm gonna try to go through this part quickly, but I'll tell you, right? So this is what I did, right? I'm not gonna repeat everything, right? But basically, the idea is encoding numeric values in a computer using an interface that is a coupling of a microdisplay of high resolution and high refresh rate, and every pixel and the color of every pixel specifically encodes a number, right? And this completely shifts or changes the paradigm of computing, because until now, all our computers are serial. The buses in the computers are serial and only encode ones and zeros, right? But now you can encode in a single pixel, in this interface, in this cable, you can encode millions of numbers, and you have millions of pixels in parallel, right? So this increases the bandwidth, right? And I filed certain patent applications related to that. Then I had another batch prepared, but I had not filed it. And I filed it, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, I can't recall. By the way, yes, sorry, one sec. Yes, so I filed the other batch of applications, right? And by the way, I have to tell you something. I don't know, this is kind of weird. So I left my home like 2 hours ago, right? And at some point during my trip, I'm not gonna say exactly when. No, never mind. Anyhow, yeah, sorry. The traffic is a bit. I'm talking slow because I'm being careful with the traffic. So yes. So I filed another batch of applications, right, with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and these are, I think next level, right? I mean, even more changing than the other ones. So I realized, right, that having this increased throughput capacity in a communication channel opens a series of possibilities, right? So first of all, because you can encode, millions of numbers now, you're not limited to ones and zeros, right? So what you can do, and this, all these things I'm mentioning here, I already applied for patents, right? So all this is already anchored with a priority anchor with the USPTO. But I'm saying this here so you understand what I was doing at FedEx. So all the computers in the world for the last, 40 years have been, ones and zeros, right? They can only encode ones and zeros when they communicate with the processor. But because I have this system that I invented, that you can encode millions of numbers, what you can do, you can group in this micro display camera array that I'm describing, you can group multiple pixels together, and with that, you can achieve architectures of computers of above 64 bits. So all the computers in the world are either, until now, right, 32 or 64 bits. But if you combine multiple pixels and you create a computer bus with this, you can create processors that are 128 bits. So double, or 256 up to 1054, right? You can go even higher with other techniques, but you can create wider buses, wider than 64 bits. So I filed a patent application for a wider bus that doesn't exist today, right? This also implies that you can, when I'm describing other technology, you can create an optically native CPU. This doesn't exist today. So I filed a patent application for that. This also implies that because this bus, let me tell you this, right? So I'm going to go with a little bit more detail on this. So the reason why in a computer today, right, you have a chassis, and in that chassis you have a CPU, a hard drive, generally, right? A hard drive, a CPU, memory cards, everything, right? In one chassis. The reason is exactly the same, is that this bus is limited in speed and it's electrical, right? So you cannot have the CPU in one place and the memory in a different place. You can't, right? Because if you put a long cable, the signal will degrade. There will be noise. There will be heat, dissipation. All these things that make that communication be not ideal, right? And also it's slow because you are transmitting ones and zeros. Ones and zeros serially, right? So what you can do is, but now that you have this cable, right, that I invented and filed the patent application for, that has super high speeds, orders of magnitude beyond what's possible today, this removes the limitation of that physical proximity. So what you can do is that you can have a chassis full of only CPUs, right? And you can have another chassis full of only memory. Imagine like a computer case, but it only has CPUs. It has multiple. It has 12, 15, 16 CPUs inside. I don't know, right? You have another chassis that has memories, and it's full of memories. And you have 20, 30, 40, 50, I don't know. Memory modules, right? Only memory, nothing else. You have another chassis full of disk, right? And you can interconnect them with this fabric, with this optic cable that I'm describing, right? And because the speed is so huge, then what you have really is not a computer. You have a pool of resources. And then when you need a computer, you can provision it, taking small pieces of resources of the different pools, right? So this makes possible kind of a disaggregated assembly of a computer on the fly, and you can then decommission it by software when you need, right? You can route the traffic on this fabric depending on how much CPU you want to connect with how much memory and with how much, you see? So in a way, it's kind of analog to the technologies of virtualization, but this is not virtual. This is using bare metal, right? So this is combining bare metal hardware together to create a computer that is dynamic. And you can do this on the fly, right? So this is a game changer. And also has implications on how data centers work, because now that you have the components separated by type, you can put all the CPU in one floor, and you can put all the memory in a different floor, and you can put and this is important because those components have different footprints for heat and electricity consumption, you see? So you can heat them and power them with different equipment, and this makes the data center be way, way more efficient. Right now, when you assemble a server, you have to provision the cooling and the electricity supply of the enclosure to the most power-hungry thing, which is the CPU, usually, right? Or it could be the GPU, the video card if you're doing crypto mining. But, you have to provision the entire enclosure to be served, right? To be serviced by a cooling system and a power system that can support that load. But you're always provisioning for the worst case. But if you can separate the components and put them in different floors, then you can cool one floor differently, the one that has the hottest, the warmest components, right? So that's the that's the way that patent works, right? So I filed that patent application as well, and I have more, right? But these are like the ones that if I describe them to you, the picture I can paint on this audio is more vivid, right? But in total, I filed 11 more patent applications that are, groundbreaking and can drastically change and alter the landscape of technology, right? And here's what I was going to FedEx today. So what I did, I sent letters to 3 people, to the chair of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission or Committee, and the head of the enforcement department of the SEC, and also to the head of the research and engineering department of the Department of Defense, the DoD, right? Because remember, in all these patents, I'm granting a free license and for use, perpetual use, no fee to the federal government and the military, right? And as you can see, these things have direct impact on quantum computing and computing at a larger scale, which, I think makes these patent applications a matter of national security. And during this process, right now, the Chinese, the Venezuelans, and the Iranians are following me in all these cars all day, trying to harm me, right? Or harm people that I care about. And are trying to steal the patents, right? So my contention would be that these are matters of national security, right? And so I sent a letter to the head of the research department of the research and engineering department of the DoD, the Department of Defense, telling that person that this patent application exists, and that the situation with the Chinese is going on, right? To see if they have interest, right? I'm trying to awake interest in them in taking action, right? But again, I don't know, right? I don't know if they will do it or if they won't. And with the SEC, the same, right? Because the reason why this is important, because you see, Intel, for example, and NVIDIA, which have huge market capitalizations, and a lot of Americans have money invested in those companies, they have all these processors that are going to be rendered obsolete by this technology, and they don't have a license of use. They haven't contacted me to even start talking about it, right? So the money of those Americans that have invested in those companies, I think, could be at risk, right? Because when these patent applications become public knowledge, and people see that Intel won't be able to compete, right, if they don't secure a license, the stock might crash, right, and people might lose their money. I think it's important, right, that the SEC takes at least reviews this, right, with experts. I mean, I'm not one to say what they do, but they should at least have someone that has technical expertise to look at these patent applications, right, and determine if NVIDIA and Intel need to file a disclosure, right, and share this information, the existence of these patent applications, with their shareholders. Now, on this, I have to tell you, the Venezuelan informant told me that the Chinese and a bunch of these, tech bros are making phone calls to talk among them about these patent applications, right? Now, I cannot prove it, but I imagine the FBI would probably have a way to see if this is the case, right? And if this is the case, you have to ask yourself the question, how is that a Venezuelan person that works in the army intelligence in Venezuela knows what the tech bros are talking about, right? How is that possible? Well, it's because they're all working together, right? That's the reason. So anyhow, that's the thing with the patent. So I sent those letters to 3 different people. One, the head of the research and engineering department of the Department of Defense. The second one was the chair of the SEC, and the third one is the head of the enforcement department of the SEC. Now, on that one, I informed them as well that the enforcement is because this is another set of companies like Clear Channel Outdoors, right? And there was, I mentioned this before multiple times, and it's documented in my books, there was an attempt to kidnap me at the parking lot of Clear Channel Outdoors Holdings in Houston last year, right, in September, like a week after I captured the GEO index. So this tells you, that they tried to kidnap me because they knew that I got the database, right? And that this company is owned by the Chinese. And this company was already fined by the SEC for bribing the Chinese, right? So I already reported them via the whistleblower program of the SEC, but they didn't take action, right? They blocked the report as they blocked my reports with the IRS. So what I did, I sent a letter to the head of the enforcement department of the SEC informing them that these companies, particularly WebMD, because of Briscoe, right, has been doing this for 20 years, and Clear Channel Outdoors, probably when this comes to light, are going to face federal scrutiny, right? And this also affects the shareholders. So they have a duty to disclose their participation to the shareholders. And I'm informing this person that is the head of the enforcement department of this potential liability, right? So I don't know. And also, to tell you, I send copies to each one of these 3 people. I send the copies of the letters that I sent to the other 2. So the 3 of them know what the other 2 know, right? And I send them 7 or 8 of the most relevant patents to these things that I'm saying, right? So I don't know. I think it's an explosive situation that let's see how they handle it, right? So so with that, I'm going to close this demo 124, and I'll see you on the next one. Okay.